The synagogue sits in silence, its walls testimony to decades of prayers. Outside, the bustle of cars and buses, and a monumental bridge. Shaare Hatikva, or Gates of Hope, was the gate of hope for a generation of German Jews who founded a little village on the northern tip of Manhattan. These were not the big city folk of Frankfurt or Berlin, but the children of a myriad of villages that speckled the countryside of southern Germany in the Black Forest. Villages that carried a tradition untouched and unaltered since the Middle Ages. Theirs was not a complex theology, but a strongly held tradition and a proud legacy which they brought with them. These were the people who built Shaare Hatikva. Shaare Hatikva inaugurated its new facilities in 1957. The Sifrei Torah were paraded through the streets and brought into the new shul with much fanfare, ushering in the beginning of an era. Many of the shul youth in the 1960s were enrolled in local public schools while attending the shul's Talmud Torah, tended to by the Reverends Walter Hess and Siegfried Kostrich. These two men, along with their other teachers, through the years took great pride in their pedagogical skills attained in Wurzburg. These men were part of a select group of educators that carried a great legacy, the legacy of Wurzburg.
The Teachers' Seminary at Wurzburg was established by the Wurzburger Rav, Rabbi Hellmann Bamberger, in 1864. The Rav originally headed a traditional yeshiva, until the need arose to produce Orthodox teachers with government certification. And so he created a full teacher's curriculum in a dormitory school, personally raising the funds for this venture. As the government sought to bring higher education to the small towns, the seminary was required to meet the new standards, while incorporating vigorous religious training. With time, the seminary program grew into a 6-year course of study, beginning with a preparatory high school, and offered intense instruction in a variety of disciplines, including grammar, music, and languages. The Wurzburg Seminary had gained renown and attracted students from all over Europe. By the 1920s, the seminary was at full capacity with 50 students and over 400 graduates working as teachers and educators in Bavarian Jewish communities and elsewhere in Germany. The seminary excelled under the leadership of educational luminary Dr. Jacob Stoll and the rabbinic leadership of Rabbi Dr. Yekusiel Neubauer, a beloved Talmudic scholar. The music program was headed by the famed Ger Tzedek of Wurzburg, Baron Ernst von Manstein, and the Chazan Reuben Eschwege, amongst others. These and other memorable mentors left an indelible mark on Jewish education to date. Once the small-town lehrer could perform as a teacher, a chazan, and could function in lieu of a rabbi. The lehrer of the 20th century had to be a fully accredited educator too. The Wurzburg graduates were eager and prepared to train a new generation of German youth. And then came the Second World War. In November of 1938, the seminary was closed by the Nazis, the students were detained. With time, many of the students came to safety in England, Israel, and on these shores. Many of those students found new positions in schools across the 50 states. Luminary educators such as Samson Raphael Weiss, Hugo Mandelbaum, and Hugo Abt, as well as Eric Greenbaum, who were early leaders of the revered Beth Yehuda School in Detroit. Avram Zentman, Alex and Ilse Roberg, leading figures in the United Hebrew Schools of Detroit. Rabbi Avram Thalberger, the Rosh Yeshiva of Beth Talmud in Bensonhurst, and the founding Rosh Yeshiva of the Sunderland Yeshiva in England, Rabbi Shammai Zahn, all graduates of Wurzburg. And finally, several familiar and beloved educators in Washington Heights, including Norbert Hellmann and Mr. Breuer of Kahalath Yeshurun, Walter Hess of Shaare Hatikva, and the Reverend Eric Neumann of Congregation Ohev Shalom. These men made their mark as Jewish educators in the German tradition. Many of them went on to receive a doctorate or rabbinic ordination, and still many were referred to as Reverend or Mr., not wanting to use a rabbinic honorific. All of them, though, remembered as dedicated and proper role models. For many years, the alumni of Wurzburg would meet for reunions in the Catskill Mountains. In 1982, they decided to record their own history and publish a book documenting the history, personalities, and ideals of the seminary. These educators had their world torn from them, but with great resolve, they imported their ideals to communities wherever they went. The Talmud Torah at Shaare Hatikva and the accompanying youth minyan and group activities brought forth a youth movement to make the community proud. Among the students, some eventually entered the Breuers or Soloveitchik yeshivas, and many went on to lead fruitful religious lives, including some in the world of Jewish education today. This past year saw the passing of Reverend Hess and Mr. Hellmann, both in their 90s. They were possibly the last two surviving alumni of the seminary. With their passing, I fear we've seen the end of an era. Though their memory lives on in the students they've brought forth, in their example, and in the walls of the shuls in which they once served. That Sefer Torah came out of which city in Germany?
It came out of a city called Wurzburg. It was near Mannheim. Near Mannheim. Weren't many German Jewish families there. And I used to kibitz with my father's Zevon Levracha that when you look on a map, my mother's hometown, which is called Friedendorf, which is in the province of Kassel, you could find it on the map. But unfortunately, his town, which was a very small town, Wurzburg,